All right, first thing I'm going to do christen the new workbench. There we go.
Now, if I'd have done that the other day, you'd have something to say about it.
Dovetails. I'll try and make this as short and sweet as possible. I'll go through the types, method, uses, and demo, and then questions. And there'll be no throwing of vegetables while I'm talking. Yeah, afterwards you can. Let me get out my pen. Now there's a few different types of dovetails, and I'll go through them. Probably a lot of people know what they are. To start off with, there's very basic through dovetail that goes all the way through the wood. And of course, this is the tail. Two parts to a dovetail, tail and a pin. And these are the pins, and this is the tail. That would be like so. There's also a half-blind dovetail. That doesn't go all the way through the wood, and these are primarily used for drawers, places where you don't want to see the end of the tail. There's also what's called think about how to draw this. You have a case and you want to put a bottom in the case. And you would use a half dovetail. To kind of hold the case together. And you really don't need to do both sides of the dovetail. You know, one side is plenty. And you can use that, say you're making a dresser, you can use it for drawer blades, you know, between each drawer. Dovetail them into the side of the case to hold the case together, keeps the sides of the cases from warping. It's real handy. I've used it a number of times in construction. And then there's probably 100 different variations of each one of those dovetails. You know, there's angled dovetails where you would say you go around the corner of a leg. Here's a leg. You would have an angled dovetail here into the side of the leg to hold it together. There's also twisted dovetails. I don't know if anybody's seen a twisted dovetail, but you actually have to put them together this way. You can't put them together this way. They have to be angled in toward each other. It's complicated. I've never made one, and I don't plan on making one. So, but those are the types of dovetails. And there's a number of different ways that you can make dovetails too. You can make hand-cut dovetails using just regular hand tools. You can use a bandsaw to make them. There's a number of different YouTube videos on using a bandsaw to make dovetails. You can use a table saw. Now, I heard they started making specialty blades that actually have a taper angle on them that will cut the dovetail, and then with a dado blade you would finish the rest of it. And router jigs, I actually brought in a router jig and donated it. I've used it to make drawers, and it's kind of fickle to get it set up and to make a tight, accurate dovetail, but once you get it set up, you can probably make 20 drawers in an hour to put it together. So it's back on the table back there. It's a donation to the club because I bought it probably 40 years ago and I haven't used it in 30 years. So, and then there's what I call a router hybrid, and I'll show you. I'll do a demonstration of it in a few minutes, where you can use a router to speed up and then use hand tools to final fit the joints. Dovetails can be used in a whole lot of different applications. As I said, a lot of people know about drawer construction, that the front and the back of the drawer are dovetailed. It kind of shows you the quality of the furniture if you see, you know, drawers and dovetailed. And the cabinet shop I used to work in, just before I left, they used to dado and nail their drawers together, and this was a real high-end cabinet shop. And finally they got the message from somebody and they started switching to dovetailed drawers, and it made quite a bit of difference. So but if you go back in history and you look at some of the drawers, you know, you look at English furniture and you'll see these very narrow, fine dovetails on it. But then if you go across the English Channel and you start looking at antique French furniture, you'll see these big, wide, ugly dovetails, where you'll have two dovetails on the side of a drawer, and where in England you would have, you know, 8 or 10 dovetails on the side of the same drawer. So it all depends on, you know, where you are and who made them. You know, for me, most of the things I make, I balance the pins and the tails equal size. You know, I'm not into these very little tiny, you know, very fine dovetails. I don't think it lends anything to strength or construction. So, but it's all somebody's choice. And as I said before, you can use dovetails in case construction, where, say this is the case bottom, and you had a drawer blade up here, you would also dovetail the drawer blade in. You could use a double there or a single dovetail to hold the drawer blade, you know, to have your drawers run on. You can also use the dovetails in turning. You know, the big popular thing now are these dovetail, they call them Dutchmen, where you mortise, pardon? Bow ties. Yeah, and even in turning, you know, if you have a split piece of wood, you can put a bow tie in there, which is just a double dovetail, and turn right over top of it, and you know, have a decorative element in your turning. So, and then also in building construction, you'll find that in the places like China, Korea, and Japan, they use a lot of dovetails in their building construction. Their major structural components, a lot of them are dovetailed together. And the videos I watched of the way they do it is they will have a lap dovetail like this, but the ratio of this dovetail here to the width, overall width, is actually very small. It might be even less than a quarter of the total width of it, but it's structurally strong enough to hold the building together. So you don't need a whole lot of dovetail to actually add structural strength to almost anything. Any questions so far? Now, I'll pass this around and you can look at it. And whenever you start making dovetails, you want to make sure, let me do this first. You want to make sure when you lay out dovetails that you're as accurate as possible. Because I've run out of fingers and toes on how many dovetails I've made the wrong way. But you can see it's laid out all the way around the piece that you're working on. And also the waist has been identified. And there's always an ongoing discussion about which to do first, the pins or the tails. And I always prefer to do the tails. I find it easier to mark out the pins if you do the tails first. But that's fully laid out. And there's a number of layout tools that you would use. I showed everybody this. You can pass this around. It shows you on one side is angles for dovetails. And, you know, that's another great discussion on dovetails, is what angle goes with what type of wood, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't think in the old days people worried too much about it. And I tend to think that back then even a lot of the angles on dovetails were arbitrary. My friend, the old German cabinet maker down in Kingsland, he would lay out dovetails and he would do it by eye. And they seem to come out just as well as, you know, if you laid them out with precision measuring tools and everything else. So yeah. And here's a couple more tools I'll pass around. These are use these for laying out. And some of them are homemade and some of them are store-bought. The smaller one is a Starrett. The black one is homemade. I made that one. And the bevel gauge is actually made by a machinist, so, or a pattern maker. Yeah, that's probably one of the handiest tools you can have right there, and it isn't that expensive. Yeah, it makes things, you know, even if you drop your your bevel gauge on the ground and lose it, you can go right back and reset it. This is a little bevel gauge. This one was actually made by the same pattern maker. And believe it or not, I've used the smaller one more than I've used the bigger one. No, you can change it. And after I'm done with the demonstration too, you can come up and take a look at all the different tools if you want and give it a try. That I need. Now, when you start your dovetail, up here I brought two different types of dovetail saws. One is a Japanese dovetail saw, the other is a Western dovetail saw. And usually when you find a dedicated dovetail saw, it'll be ground as a fine rip saw, where a Japanese will be as a regular crosscut saw or a hybrid saw. If you ever practice anything in woodworking, practice sawing. Because that's where most people mess up, is they can't saw to a line. And when in doubt, leave enough to trim. And that's one place where if you do the tails first, the angle actually becomes arbitrary, because you're going to be tracing right off the angle that you cut. So, if you're off 1 degree or 2 degrees or 3 degrees, doesn't matter, because your dovetail will still be the same. Pardon?
When you work out your tail, did you use a pencil, or does it matter?
No, actually what I used was the marking gauge, because you want a very accurate, crisp line that you can saw to and eventually chisel to. Now, a lot of times what people will do on a dovetail too is they will take and make a rabbet on the back of a dovetail, so that you're only dovetailing. Where'd my pencil go, or my pen? There it is. So you're only dovetailing a portion of it. And what it does is it makes a nice reference surface. In fact, what I'll do is, where's my marking gauge?
Right there.
And I was telling somebody that you watch these videos on YouTube of these supposed professional woodworkers, and it seems like they don't own a clamp or a vise in their shop, because they're constantly trying to hold things by hand to mark them out. When they could be a lot more accurate with something in a clamp, and it only takes a couple seconds to clamp something down. I should remember too that this is a rapid action vise. So you have a rabbet on the back of it, and what that does is it actually acts as a reference surface to get up against the piece you're cutting. Yeah, and it's hidden. And what it does too is that if you do that on drawers, it makes a nice clean surface on the inside of a drawer. If you look at some of the old time drawers that were handmade, you'll find where saws have run further into the cut than was necessary, and it just makes it look rough. But then the next thing you want to do, now this is going to be a half blind dovetail. The next thing you want to do is you want to chisel to your lines. Oh, good. My clamps are just big enough. Where'd the other one? If you ever find something that looks like that at a garage sale, buy it. That is a lignum vitae mallet, and you will never find one very often. And I've had the great luck of finding two of them. And this one only cost me 15 bucks. And the other one is bigger and heavier, and that one only cost me 8 bucks. Yeah, you can't buy lignum vitae anymore. It's a protected species. You can buy what's called Eurowood, which is a South American hardwood in the same family as lignum vitae. And it has basically the same specific gravity. So after I finish laying out the tail, then I'll go through and I'll show you how I lay out the pins. And actually, if your layout is accurate, everything should match up and it should fit. You can always tell when you hit bottom because the sound changes. Then if you have a rabbit, you have to go across to your rabbit and make sure you have a nice clean shoulder on it.
You're choosing one, right?
Yeah. It depends on how much waste you have left. If you have more than a 16th or a 32nd, you don't want to chisel right to the line because you'll end up running off of it, like I just did here. You'll notice that this mahogany that I'm using is some of the squirreliest stuff you'll find. It's got the craziest grain in it. It changes directions about 4 different times. See, so that's, and then to lay it out, you want to get it nice and level and even. And of course, I didn't bring a square with me. Actually, I'll trust Veritas here to be square. And there's the half blind laid out. And you can see that it's fully marked on all the surfaces that you're going to be dealing with. Now, I had talked before about sliding dovetails, and while you're passing that around, I'll show you this. This is actually a moving philister dovetail plane. And it's great for making dovetails, for sliding dovetails, and I'll show you. What happened to my iron?
Why'd you start in the middle?
It's easier in case the grain direction changes. This piece, the grain happens to be pretty consistent all the way through. When you also, when you work, you want to, if you're going to do both sides, you want to flip your wood over because the grain crosses. Let me do a few more here. You can pass that around. And this actually comes as a set. This was courtesy of my friend, the old German cabinet maker, too. And this set is made in Germany. And this is actually more useful for house building than it is for fine cabinet work. But for dovetails like that, it works great. But it also comes with this, which you would route out for a sliding dovetail, and also a saw that you would saw the dovetail angle with that you're going to use. So you can take a look at those when you
Get that from the old German guy, right?
yeah.
Where would you get those nowadays?
You can
Something like it.
you can order them online. I've used this, for making these half lap dovetails, and it works great. And you can do them across the grain too. because it has a scoring steel on it. So now with this, you have it all laid out and everything. What you have to do is get rid of all the waste. And if I did this in my home shop, I'd take the drill press and a Forstner bit and knock out about 90% of this stuff. Because it makes it go a lot faster. But here you want to start by sawing kitty corner to give you a reference line. And you always want to leave a little bit for trimming. You don't want to saw right to the line. Then all it is just a matter of chopping out the waste to the line. And you can also take a router and set up a router to take out most of the waste. The only thing you can't do is get into the corners with a router. And as I said, when I start chiseling, I always start about a 1/16 away from your finish line. So then it doesn't knock your line off.
As you're chiseling away, you're taking relatively small cuts.
Not necessarily.
No?
You want to get as much of the waste out as fast as possible. You know, you could be here all day trying to chisel out one dovetail. And you can be a little more aggressive because you're not chiseling to your line just yet. Basically, you just want to get it out of there. And remember, when you're going into the corners, you're going in at an angle because it's angled. but you want to try and take about an eighth of an inch at a time, or you'd be here all day. Because you sawed kitty corner, the front goes very easy, but when you get into the back where, you know, the saw hadn't gotten to, it makes it a little more difficult. Then when you get it that close, then you can start chiseling to your lines. And it's always handy to have one of these, a skew ground chisel, because then you can get into the corners, if not to chisel, to mark them out. There's where we're at so far. This is where it becomes tricky because the grain here is so squirrely on this. You have to be careful you don't break out something you didn't plan on breaking out. I'll show you this quick. That's what's left for the last cut. Okay. You want to get down to just about that thin for the last cut. That way you get a nice crisp. And you aren't driving your chisel off the line. And 99% of the time with a dovetail, if it's too tight a fit, it's at the bottom because your chisel tends to go like this, kick out toward the bottom of your cut. And then lastly, you take a paring chisel and you can pare right to your line and do the final fitting. A paring chisel, mine are sharpened at a lot lower angle, so that it's like a razor. It takes a very, very fine cut. I never drive these with a mallet. They're always used by hand. It's the angle that they're ground at, because being such a low angle, you tend to fracture the steel at the end of the blade, chip it.
The angle about 15 degrees.
No, these are about 22.5, and normally chisels tend to run about 25, 28, somewhere in there, with a secondary bevel of about 30 degrees, especially if you're working in hardwoods. Yeah. Well, it's far from perfect, but it went in.
Yes. It's gonna go. So to get it tighter, all you need to do is
Yeah,
just put a little trim and
right. Now what I'll do is I'll show you the cheater's way to make a whole lot of tails at one time. And all you need is one of these. And I didn't pass this around, but you can see that there's a center line marked on there. which is the center line of the dovetail bit. Yeah, up here. Okay. See that? Right there. And all you would have to do is take your square wherever you wanted to dovetail. Say you wanted them, 2 or 3 or 1 or whatever apart. It's on the bottom. Yeah, we got a spare one here. And with this, all you really need is a palm router and a bushing set and a dovetail bit. And as fast as you can move your reference, you have tails for the, say, a drawer side. Yeah, that's the part of the cheater's way. And then what you would do is you would take and set your straight bit at the depth of your tail and clean out for your pins. But if you're doing, 6 or 8 drawers, it would behoove you to, and you can, this is a small dovetail bit. You can put any size dovetail bit, or any size bushing in there, to do whatever you want to do. You can do the end of a case with it. If you're doing say a bookcase or a dresser or something, and you want to dovetail the whole side, you can use that to cut all the pins on it or all the tails on it in a short amount of time. It just saves time. That's it. Anybody got any questions?
Are you familiar with the Incra jig from way back?
Yeah,
Pretty complicated.
yeah, it is. And the
They can
same,
do a lot of different things.
and the same with the Lee dovetail jig. You know, they probably got to be $800 or $1,000 by now. You know, and they work and they do make great dovetails. You know, and if you're in a production situation, you know, I would say, yeah, it's an asset to have it. But, you know, if you make 2 or 3 dressers in your lifetime, you know, and plus it's fun, you know, just tinkering away, cutting dovetails by hand. So,
What kind of saw is that?
this one is a Japanese dovetail saw, and this one is a Western dovetail saw. You know, just 2 different style saws. They both do the same thing. They both do it well. You know, it's just what you prefer. This one I'm pretty sure is ground as a rip saw, and this one is ground either as a hybrid or a crosscut saw. And a rip saw will crosscut better than a crosscut saw will rip. If you want to remember that, why. But yeah, and these, because of the thin blade and the aggressive teeth on it, you know, you can cut through this bench top, you know, in a relatively short amount of time. So if you want to come up and take a look at some of these tools and the techniques and what have you, and throw rotten tomatoes or whatever you want.
Thank you, Paul. My grandson just made Eagle Sky, and I'm making him a box with Eagle Sky emblem dovetails in that box now. Hopefully. There you go. A little bit